Thanks for watching. Today we're looking at my Element RC GateKeeper and we're going to add some performance upgrades. This thing is pretty basic, so I didn't do a whole lot to this when I built it. I did of course put a different body on there, so what you see currently on here is a Proline Racing Chevrolet Colorado body that is not intended for the GateKeeper, but with a bit of creativity you can get it to fit. I did have my reservations, I think, about the performance once I built this thing. Seeing that there's a ton of weight going on high up. So this GateKeeper has a full roll cage. It has panels attached to the roll cage. It has an interior. So there's quite a bit of weight going on high up. Of course that would, you would think, affect performance. Also seeing that I didn't add any billet wheels, so there's nothing fancy going on. There's no upgrades, no brass upgrades going on inside of the axles. So I did think that it would perhaps be a tiny bit tippy when driving it, but this actually is one of my best planted and best performing rigs out in my collection. I have a really good time with this thing every time I take it out, and I think that will only get better once I have installed the next upgrades, because I do think that sometimes it gets hung up a tiny bit, whether that be on rocks or on twigs. I live in a pretty foresty area, and of course it can get caught up when you drive over some twigs or twines or some roots, and then with stuff poking up or perhaps getting kicked up by the front tires, catching in the chassis, and before you know it, your rig is stuck, and you really don't want to have that. There's a company called Artful Dodgers, and what they make is this full armor pack that you can put under the chassis of your rig. So whether that be a GateKeeper or in the future, for example, a Night Runner, you would just have to browse through their eBay store to see what they have. I will make sure that there's a link to their eBay store in the video description box, and I will also make sure that there's a link to their Instagram page, because they actually do some really nice photography. This is the main part of the kit that they have available for their GateKeeper. So this is actually the skid plate for the belly of the car. So this goes under the main part of the chassis, bolts right up. If you do not have the hardware needed by threading it out, then they have included it. So in this case there's a couple of screws that you see included with this skid. This is 1mm thick stainless steel. It is also finished really nicely, so it is brushed. Looks a tiny bit like the DeLorean that Marty McFly was driving in Back to the Future. And you will also see that there's a logo engraved here that says Artful Dodgers with their characteristic fox that they have in their logo. Their branding is incredibly on point. This part over here mounts up to the front. I won't say right under the front bumper, because this bumper piece is more like a pivot point for that roll cage that is underneath of this body. And they also have these two items over here, and these two pieces, they mount right underneath the pumpkins of your axles, making those areas a tiny bit smoother as well. It's mostly that belly skid that I am incredibly curious about, just because I don't think it's just a nice performance upgrade, but also visually this will really add something to the truck, of course, along with that front skid plate or that bash guard that you see over here. So what I will do is I will mount it. This won't take me all that long. This is also going to be a nice short video, I think. Mount this, get it buttoned up, and then get it ready to take it out on the trails again. But before that, I will show you the finished product. I had no idea it was this easy to make an armored truck, but this thing currently has a fully armored chassis. Or, as the Artful Dodgers say it has now been Dodgerized. Let's start up with the belly skid plate. There's two screws in the Stealth X gearbox that you need to take out of the original skid plate in order to put this thing into place. I chose to go with, there's not really any instruction, but I chose to go with the shorter screws to put those all in the center over here, and took the two longer screws to put those in the back. Now before you go and get all enthusiastic and torque the ever-living daylight out of these two rear screws, I was almost cussing over there, do use some caution, because these two, they thread into the trailing arm mount that is bolted into the chassis rails. And if you feel behind it, again, you know, use your fingers if you can, but if you feel behind it, you will feel that there's like a 1/4 inch space between this skid plate and that trailing arm mount. So you don't want to over torque these two screws, because you will make it ugly immediately, and you will have plenty of opportunity to make it ugly out on the trails. So just nip them up and leave it alone after that. Walk away from it and just see how it holds up. If you need to torque it up a tiny bit more afterwards, you will see that as time goes by. Yeah, that's it. Now, there's also this rear axle skid plate. I did put this one in. I will get into why I didn't put the other one in a bit. You take the 4 screws out that are being used to hold the diff cover or the pumpkin cover into place. So it is really simple. You just put the piece in there, you put the screws back, and Bob is your uncle. This really provides a nice extra bit of smoothness underneath the chassis to avoid you getting hung up on stuff. Now, speaking of getting hung up on stuff, if you would imagine this being the front of the truck, this of course depends on where you drive. I did not want to put the front one in there, so I chose not to go with the front axle cover, just because I think that in my case where I live, this will just scoop up too much crap and be more of a nuisance than an upgrade. What I did, however, do is install this. They call this a front axle protector. I see it more as like a steering link and a panhard protector than anything else. This is a really nice bash guard, and this is also, I think, in this entire kit, one of the most efficient pieces. There's a couple of different mounting holes provided with, so you can choose where you put this. I position this exactly in the middle. You just take the 4 screws out that hold the bumper mount, or the pivot point in this case, because the GateKeeper uses this as a pivot. You take those out and you use those 4 screws to mount this bash guard or those front axle protector and put that in position. Now, by putting it exactly in the middle, I think it doesn't affect my approach angle in a negative way. I also do think that it sits far enough away from the front axle to really act as a guide and smooth things over in case I would otherwise perhaps get hung up. And right now it would sort of like make sliding over objects a bit easier, while also, of course, like I said, protecting that panhard and that steering link. So all of that is cool stuff. And apart from that, I think it just looks really cool. So it really adds a nice extra bit of realism and a nice bit of extra weight down low where you want to have it. If you have any questions or comments about the Element RC GateKeeper or about any of the Artful Dodgers products that I showed in this video, let me know in the comments section and I will try to get back to you. If you want to know more about the Artful Dodgers products, go check out a link to their eBay store in the video description box. Also, I highly recommend checking out their Instagram page because they take some amazing pictures, and well, as always, links to all of the other items that you have seen. So for example, the Element RC GateKeeper, whether that be the kit or the ready to run, the wheels and tires and the body that I used, all of that stuff can be found in the video description box. If you have not subscribed yet, please do. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button before you leave. I will catch you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.
Back on.